Okay, well, welcome back, everybody. Since I imagine not everybody in this room is a BINA member, I wanted to go ahead and share a little bit about BINA and encourage you to go ahead and become a member. So just by registering for this event did not make you a BINA member. We don't sort of spam you with stuff just because you register for our events, but we do share a monthly newsletter if you register as a BINA member, and you get to hear about all the exciting things that are going on. So my name is Nikki Biley. I'm the program coordinator for Bioimaging North America. I actually work remotely in Charlottesville, Virginia, but I come and visit Vanessa and Kevin here at the Morgridge Institute quite regularly. And I'm very grateful that Vanessa's been here on site to get so much of the work done here going for this meeting. So thanks, Vanessa, for all your hard work, and Isa as well, who's volunteered a lot of hard work for this. So, whoops, I can hear bounce. Thank you. Okay, so we are a mission-driven organization. We are largely volunteer-based. Vanessa and I are the only two people who are actually paid to do anything around here. So everybody else is volunteering their time. And they are members that are all passionate about the very same thing. And that is about supporting and creating a community where we can all help each other and advance and succeed together. So as I mentioned, if you are at the meeting, you are not automatically a member. So do please consider becoming a member. It's free. Like most of the things we do, it's free, and that's thanks in large part to the funding that we have from the Chen Zuckerberg Initiative. So our core values are community, excellence, and inclusion, and we have a number of initiatives that go on in BINA around standardization, interaction, basically getting you together here at these sorts of events, advocating for the community as a whole, and education is a very, very big thing too. We do all the work through the working groups. So you'll see people with those pins. They are people on working groups. So please go ahead and ask them about the work that they're doing. They are generally topics of interest to the community and what the community needs. And wherever possible, we try to align our activities with the activities of our international partners. So working group members and chairs are volunteering their time. They meet about once a month to push their initiatives forward. And if you're interested in joining or getting involved, just contact us. We also have user groups. These you just need to register to participate in. And with that, you get the Zoom link, and those happen every 2 months. And they're on new areas of technology, on the metadata stuff that you heard Katerina mentioning earlier today. And this is our activities page. So on our activities page, you'll learn about all the different things that we're doing, but also about some of the programs that we have. So these programs are an opportunity to participate in courses that are not run by BINA necessarily, some of them are, but where we can offer registration support for members to attend. And so BINA members can actually submit for next year's list of courses. So that is open right now. If you're organizing a course in North America and you'd like to be considered for that, please go to our website and submit that. And then we have a metrology effort, the Metrology Suitcase Program, and then exchange of experience, where you can get funding to travel and spend up to a week working with somebody in their lab, learning a new technology or image analysis approach. Most of what we offer is free and online to try and address the inability sometimes for people to travel and get away from their core facilities or for their research. We've grown tremendously since the initial CCI funding. As you can see, every year we're gaining new members, and our demographic pretty much represents the populations of the various countries involved. We have a number of other countries that are members too, and not just for North America. And those are largely people on our working groups that are helping us to keep aligned with what's going on in Europe and around the world. This shows you that back in 2021, you'd be forgiven to think that we are essentially all core facility people. In fact, at that time, we were about the same number of people working in core facilities as in other academic roles. But as we have gained membership in the last 3 to 4 years, we actually now have a lot more people that are in academic roles that are outside of core facilities. But we also are still lacking a little bit in our industry members. So we're here for everybody, academic and industry alike. So if you're in the audience from industry and you're not a member, please join us. We want to hear your voice too. This shows you how we've grown as well with respect to our participation. I mean, this year was tremendous. We were rather overwhelmed, but very excited to see the large number of people that wanted to participate, both in person and virtually. And these pictures are pictures that we take every year. to commemorate these events, and we'll be doing one of these at lunchtime today outside in the stairs, and we'll be doing another one later in the week because we'll have a few people joining us later in the week. And I think with that, that's the end of my presentation. So I will step away and let the transition happen. But I'd like to also introduce you to Mariana Denis, who is the co-chair of our DEI working group, along with Andres Navarez, who is joining us virtually. So thank you, everybody, and we'll settle in now for some presentations from our various working group efforts.
Okay, so I'm very happy to be here. I am a co-chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Working Group, and the session that we are hosting is all relevant to impact. So the three speakers that are going to speak today are all relative to what we're going to discuss in a second. So the working group members are these different great people. So as I said, the co-chair is Andres Navarez. We also have Holly Aaron, Eunice Fabian Morales, whom I think is here perhaps, Meredith Calvert, Joanna Bishop, Michael Fernandez de Almeida, Odelis Pollard, Feather Eves, Natalie Wu, Ben Smith, and Suganya Sivaguru Nathan, who is also here. Natalie is also here, so several of the members are here. You will have access, I think, to these slides so you can see what everybody's focus is. As a team, we focus on different things. Everybody has different interests, and so we've tried to really address a lot of the needs of the community that you can see in this word cloud. Among them is, of course, well, underserved communities, underrepresented minorities, women in microscopy, community college, Indian community, Latin American, Black scientists, and many more initiatives. As a group, what we've have been hosting as initiatives include, for example, highlighting women during the International Women and Girls Day in Science. You can have a look at the different BINA resources where different women were highlighted, including the awardee today that will be awarded later. There's also the speaker series. So the Black History Month speaker series, we had 4 speakers, and right now what's ongoing is the Hispanic Heritage Month. We've had 2 speakers, and we will have 3 more after the Community Congress. We are also very active in being reviewers of applications for BINA support, especially ensuring that there is, of course, consideration to DEI, and that includes the exchange of experience and the professional development program. You will also have access to these slides, and I'm very grateful for Nikki for providing that. So that's something very important to us, that different people are represented, that everybody has equal access. And so I will dedicate some more of the remaining time of this introduction of the working group to discuss a survey that we sent out to all working group members. And in specific, we wanted to know, well, what is DEI? We know that in different countries it means different things, and so in general it means all of these, right? Yeah, and it's important that no community feels underrepresented. So that was one of the first efforts that we want to see. What do you think it is? So based on your answers, we got a lot of insights. And we wanted to know also, what do you think is good about BINA in terms of this inclusion? And these were highlights that we found in that survey. So 97% of respondents feel that BINA is inclusive, which we were very happy to hear. 93% feel their voices are heard. Many people thought that the LABI BINA meeting was a wonderful, wonderful thing, and that we should, continue to foster that relationship. And then specific highlights were, of course, that the EOE and the professional development grants are great inclusion efforts, that membership of women is great, so there's great representation. And then specific groups that were highlighted was early career. It was highlighted many, many times, so I'm very, very happy because it's the next generation, of course, of people. Corporate partners highlighted for their diversity efforts in terms of career paths. DEI, well, yeah, it's the group. And then training and education for their translation efforts and breaking language barriers. But of course, there were also highlights, which is what we wanted to know and see where the group is going forward. What's the room for improvement of BINA as a whole and of the DEI working group in specific. So of BINA as a whole, 30 to 40% of respondents didn't feel that diverse voices were heard. And so there were some highlights, some suggestions, for example, rotating leadership to foster inclusion, executive leadership should be more diverse, improving communication to better understand the needs of the community, improving compromise to ensure all ideas are heard, reaching out to remote areas, better inclusion of all North American participants. I believe you saw in Nikki's slide that the representation of Mexico is slightly small, so that's an effort that we've been pursuing now to increase that representation, improving participant retention, improving the inclusion of other minority groups, other than the ones that are already included, and that's very much what we found out. And so a lot of what we will do now as a group is, address those things that as a community you highlighted. Specific to the DEI working group, the main thing was 90% of respondents feel that we should become better integrated with other working groups and that we don't communicate very well what the group actually does. So that was great feedback. And of course, that will be the basis of what we do next. So improving communication, ensuring more representation of other minorities, other targeted strategies, better representation of all countries, generating educational resources, and improving outreach. So we have been actively reaching out to chairs of other working groups to promote that integration, to foster it. And we will have open sessions in the DI working group where other group members are welcome to join and really voice your needs, right? The one thing that we want to do, so to ensure representation and inclusion of other minorities, we want to pursue a change in the working group where it's a more horizontal structure. So we want different chairs representing the multiple minority groups that are part of BINA, and then highlight their achievements, seek more in the speaker series to highlight that and disseminate the science of everyone. And then of course, active recruitment. So probably many of you have been reached out. And if you want to join, please reach out to us as well. Targeted strategies, we will continue the current projects and we will address the strategies that we are communicating here. Improving outreach. So that was another thing. We will make that one of our priorities as well. Generating educational resources. We've been in touch with the training and education and the communications group, and we're going to be working together on that. And then to ensure better representation of the BINA countries, we have reached out to many Mexican scientists already, and we hope to be working together and really improving and representing what the community needs. And so with this, I'd like to thank you and to start with our speakers. Let's see if I can see. So I would like to welcome our first speaker, who is Elida Gastelum Martinez. She is from CIATEG, Mexico. She has a very interesting career. So I was reading about her work. She focuses on processing and environmental engineering and agro-industrial and waste processing. And so she will tell us about the impact that the Train the Trainers course that she took had on her career.
Hello. Oh, wow. It's been a long way. And yes, I'm going to tell you a story. I've been working in this presentation in probably 2 weeks. And it's when you look back, you see, wow, it's something. When I started a few years ago, I had no idea that one day we could have what we have now. I'm going to tell you now. But first, I want to tell you that we are in Mexico. We are, the institutions, we're part of the CONACYT, it's the National Council of Humanities, Science, and Technology. We are 26 institutes. In CIATEG, it's this one here. This is where I work. And we are in different places. It's in the name, it's in Spanish, it's located, well, it says Jalisco because it's in Jalisco. It's where it says Central. And we had 4 units in Zapopan at the north and in the southeast, and in Yucatan. This is where I work. This is the unit, the general unit. We have different labs. We work in different areas. And just a little reminder, we are in the middle of the jungle, and this is Yucatan, this is Merida, and if you don't know, something huge fall, and some guys died. So thanks to that, the environment is unique, and we have a lot of caves and water caves. So if you want to go one day, you're very welcome. And well, so it's more like a journey. The unit in Yucatan started in 2002, and it started like a small. It was it started in the in a small piece in the house of one of my colleagues. It started like a technological unit just for doing some small for doing some analysis, and then we started to grow. And I arrived in 2012 at Yucatan, and we had two lab microscopes, and that was it. And then in 2013, we moved here so that to the big place. We had the building, and we started to grow. We had different areas, like I said, but we had nothing. We started to grow. So in 2015, I had a project. We had funds from CONACYT, and we started to have these equipments to start doing microscopy to help all the research we were doing. And we bought this equipment, but that was the moment I realized, okay, it's a big equipment. We're going to do a lot of things, but we need a lot of, we can have this just in any table. We're going to need to have a space. We need to do changes, and we didn't have money. So in 2021, I received another amount of funds to improve this. It didn't work well. Most of you already know that it didn't work well, but I met the Mexican bioimaging workshops, and this is where everything started. The community, the communication, the help, the ideas. And then in 2020, I participated in the facility management, impact facility operation, user training, thanks to BINA and global bioimaging. And this is exactly the moment I realized I wasn't alone. This is the moment where I met a lot of people. They have the same problems. It's not only funding, it's the problems with people, it's all the problems related to training, to users. And in 2015, I didn't know I was going to face them. So I said, okay, I'm not alone. I'm going to do it. If we want to do it right, okay, let's have all the information these people, amazing people have and want to share. And then in the same year, I went to the MLMC trainer, and it was the same. They gave me a lot of ideas. They teach us, they show us how to do this training better to accomplish the law for imaging, for explaining the students, explaining the people who wants to do this, to make it easier for them. So in that moment, I realized I had to change, I had to grow bigger. We didn't have the space, so we started to relate with other projects. So we finally, last month, we finally finished to build this adequate space. So now we have a bigger room. Well, I can say I have a room. Now we have a bigger room. We have a space where we can have these students to do all the work. And now we are separated. Well, in this picture, we can see we have the two spaces with general Microsoft, and where the students are going to do the bigger imaging. And well, it's not that. It's well, before I go to this part, I want to say that it wasn't easy. There's no funding, well, but it's the community. It's the idea. If you want to do this better, if you want to grow, if you want to share what you know, and especially if you want to give other people the opportunity to start this path, you have to keep working and starting and communicating and asking and doing a lot of work. And yeah, in the time, someone said, okay, I'm going to help you, but we're going to work together and do a lot of different things. It was fine. At the end, we had this space, and the students are now happy. They are working, and this is in the meantime, we had, as you can see in these pictures, we didn't have. Well, that's the first picture. In the first picture, we are in the meeting room. So I had to move all the equipment and start teaching. We're going to do this, we're going to do it. Three people in that picture are now in the master's degree with us. So they love this part, and they came to us, and we have to work in, well, not comfortable. We have to move all the way and we use this table, and then someone said, I'm going to work. We have to move from one place to another. Well, now they're very comfortable. And we continue working. In September 2023, we participated in the science fair because we think if we make these kids to fall in love in microscopy, eventually they are going to continue this path. They're going to come, or they're going to go to a university to say, I want to do this, because I love the way they get excited every time they see a small piece of whatever, a microorganisms, a flower, rocks. They don't care. They go out and chase. They find small samples on dirt, and they love it. And that's the most rewarding part of this job. And we also participated in 8M with several kids. We are in the first part. We invited all the girls from high school to have this participate in these events. And like I said, it's part of what we are doing. We're starting to invite the girls, to invite the students, the young students, to see this beautiful career, or these areas they can work, and there's a lot of opportunities. And finally, in May this year, we also had a group of students from Texas A&M, and they usually go to Merida, to Yucatan, to do like a camp. And we have them to work with the microscope. We didn't have the space finished, so we still had to work in different areas, move everything around, so they could interact with the microscopes and imaging, and to see this world. And well, now that the space is more adequate, the students from postdoctorals and they are working. They continue they're having results, better results now, and this is basic. The first photos they took. Now that we are, like I said, not the area is finished, and the project is basically about studying the anthracnose and the effects of streptomyces. So they're starting to work now. We are now buying some dyes. We are starting to put out the technologies or the methods, so they can so they have the pictures to follow the studies, and eventually I hope they're going to have this, the job finish, and they can publish this. And this is the first picture of a student that's undergraduate, and he's starting. That's one of the guys in the first picture that I said. They came, and they started to work, and they're starting. This is the first images they get, and I love them because they get really excited, and I'm excited for them. Just to finish, I want to say, after all these years, it's been well, really difficult. But like I said, I'm not alone. You are not alone. There's always 1,000 problems, but just solve one at a time. It's not easy, but it's worth it. The community, it's great. This community, it's awesome. They work with you, they help you, they give you tips, they give you advices. They are with you. So keep working, just keep working. It's amazing. And just to finish, this wow moment, it's the best part of my job. When I go to the schools, any schools, a ferry, I don't care, I don't know, in any place I put a microscope and the kids come, and when they say, wow, this is the moment I say, yes, it's worth it. And thank you all. I thank you for being here. Thank you, BINA. Thank you, Global Imaging, Mexican Bioimaging Workshops.
Yeah, so our next speaker is Joel Rivera. He also has a very versatile career. I was also very interested in reading about it, with various imaging modalities, and he's also heavily involved with indigenous communities. He was part of Pina Colarusso's imaging technology course, and so we look forward to his talk.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Joel. I'll be speaking about, I participated in the BINA Professional Development Award. I was a recipient last year. I'll be talking about how that experience impacted me and the others in our group and our department, our community. And yes, I'm working out of and zooming in from the University of Victoria. So that's in British Columbia, Canada. And I want to start by acknowledging the Lekwungen-speaking peoples on whose traditional territory University of Victoria stands, and the Sanghees, Esquimalt, and Wasanish people whose historical relationships with the land continue to this day. So on the right, you have the Swain Lab. We operated out of the Division of Medical Sciences. And I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this is myself, Nicole York, and Dr. Swain. Nicole York is the lead of the paper that I'll be talking about that we've been working on. And Kasana also is an undergraduate that works in this particular project. So as I mentioned, the BINA Professional Development Program enabled me to, or funded my participation to the quantitative super resolution microscopy workshop. So this happened at the University of Calgary last year in May, and you'll hear a little bit more about it from Pina, who is the presenter going after me, from the organizer's perspective. But briefly, this workshop covered everything from, sample preparation, super resolution technologies, namely STED, which is the equipment that we have in our lab. But also image analysis, image processing, and all kinds of techniques. Basically, anything you'd need start to finish for an experiment of this nature, right? And this was really great for me because we have a STED in our lab, but I was coming in and I hadn't used this equipment before, and it really gave me a lot of context that I'll be talking about, and the outcomes that I really felt that I got from this workshop. And on the right is just it's a picture of our imaging room. You can't actually see our STED, but we're operating the STED here. Yeah, we have a SP8 STED with 592 and 660 nanometer depletion lasers, if anyone's interested. So what I'm gonna start with is the most, what I would imagine from the trainee's perspective, the most direct outcome, and that's essentially building competency towards doing experiments, right? And what you can see is the title of the paper that I've been working on and with the others in our lab. And as it's implied in the name of my presentation, it pertains primarily to the heart and how various forms of cardiac disease have developmental origins that, the pathological changes occur, prior to disease presentation, right? So the H9C2 rat cardiomyoblast cell line, we've been studying it and we think it has the potential to model cardiomyocyte development because it recapitulates several aspects of cardiomyocyte biology, and to enable its use as a model system, we've been characterizing, quantifying the morphological, functional calcium handling, biochemical gene expression features of the cell line. And well, to start, one thing that we noticed, or that Dr. Nicole, our PhD candidate, Nicole York, noticed, is that with a differentiation of the cell line of the H9C2 cells, we get these specks that appeared in the images. And doing STED on the images actually enabled us to not only identify, but resolve the structure of what appeared to be actin clusters. So we look at actin in this characterization because it has, all kinds of implications on cell shape, but also actin clusters have been associated with establishing polarity and development. So we're very interested in this and doing STED and applying some of those newfound STED skills directly post-workshop helped us with this, a lot of troubleshooting that comes with doing super resolution, right? But also staying on this doing experiments outcome is most of what I do in the lab and did prior was actually a lot of live imaging. I do calcium imaging. And one thing I wanted to show, when I show this picture of the workshop, there's a very high ratio of instructors and professionals to participants, right? And this really made for an engaging experience, and well, particularly in the Leica STED portion, and I speak about that because it's the equipment that we have. There was like two professionals, two representatives to like four participants. So we really got the chance to, before and after, to engage and talk with these professionals and ask questions specifically about issues that we had. And the thing with live imaging and calcium imaging is you really need to, image at a high scanning speed and a high frame rate to capture the transients and the spontaneous dynamics that are happening. But also you don't want to sacrifice too much of your signal to noise, so they wouldn't be legible. So I really had a fruitful conversation with one of these professionals, and it helped me, establish my troubleshooting, but also optimizing process that I go through every time I start a live imaging experiment, right? And I'm sorry I don't have a GIF here showing the live imaging, but I just didn't know how the internet connection would appear on the screen. But you can just see, the spontaneous changes before and after in the level of calcium, which is what we see with calcium imaging. We're successfully able to do this. But also I wanna say in the workshop, there was a very high diversity of careers and focuses, and we spoke a lot also about image analysis, of course. And the thing that I'd struggled a lot with prior to the workshop was really establishing like a pipeline to analyze my data, to quantify the calcium imaging data. And I spoke and made connections with a computational scientist, and he gave me, tips on these papers that actually were huge into helping me overcome this barrier. And another thing is that, I'm imaging cardiomyocytes, and most of these toolboxes are made for imaging in neurons. So I got tips on how to adapt these thresholds and things like that so I could cater it to my own needs. And I put a Fiji Image J logo here as well because, I think everybody uses Fiji, but we had a quick session, introducing us just tips and tricks, for people that do this all the time. And I was able to pick up, little things like synchronizing your windows or stuff that I wouldn't have thought about. That I always give tips to people when they're inevitably using Fiji in some part of their pipeline to help optimize the process. It was very useful, I found. And the last outcome that I want to talk about is, going a lot beyond just like the research of a trainee. But when I got back from the workshop, I volunteered, but also was I was encouraged by my PI, Dr. Swain, to present, you know, some of my, what I learned at the workshop about super resolution, specifically STED, because this is our equipment, to show it to the other groups, PIs, and students in our department to kind of introduce them to this technology. Because, some people might have heard of it, but if you're not in bioimaging, it's hard to get that kind of context and the applications that you can use it for. So we introduced it, inspire new collaborations. But at the same time, the study comes with maintenance costs, and the way we finance it, or partially, is by, lending out our microscope to other labs. And what I've shown here is actually one of the groups that they came in and they imaged with our microscope and with the help of our team. And they're in another department. They image they synthesize chemical compounds, and they take images of these to validate them through our STAT, and also, they do EM. But yeah, another thing, just bridging out to other groups and introducing them to these technologies. And yeah, that's what I have. Thank you very much, Biogen North America, and the Chan Zuckerberg initiative that funded my professional development to the Super Resolution Workshop. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Pina Colarusso. She is director of the Live Cell Imaging Laboratory at the University of Calgary. She's heavily involved in microscopy education and is also very involved in community engagement. So we're very excited for your talk too.
To go along with the space theme, we have some aurora in some deep sky near Calgary. Good morning, everybody, and thank you to BINA, who has supported my on-site visit through the Exchange of Experience program. I'm here to talk about on the flip side, on the organizational instructional side of the quantitative super resolution workshop that Joel just spoke about. I think it was in the fall of 2022, I just put a call out to colleagues across Canada saying, hey, this COVID thing on site, maybe we should start this again. And like usual, when you get a bunch of bioimaging people on an email train or on a Zoom call, people volunteer. And there's something special about the bioimaging community. They just don't say they're going to do it. They come through big time. Like I'm just overwhelmed. So I think earlier they called it Pina's course. It's not Pina's course, it's our course. It would have happened with everybody here. So the point is, for the quantitative super resolution, it was done before COVID at McGill in 2019. And McGill is at the other end of the country. Well, Newfoundland would beg to differ, but for us, it's pretty far. So we thought, hey, why don't we move it to the West Coast this year? So we got together and we were able to host this course. And a critical part of this was the BINA support for the professional exchange program. For those of you who've been to Calgary, you've probably stopped at the airport and gone on to Banff and Lake Louise. It's a gateway. The nature is beautiful. These are just a couple of snapshots that I've taken on hikes around, well, maybe Jasper's more than a short drive, but we're really close to beautiful nature. But with this proximity to nature, if you note that blue dot, we're geographically isolated. So it's really tough to run into people. I remember once I was in James Jonkin's facility in Toronto. I couldn't believe who kept walking through the door saying, this massive people, these massive interactions would be wonderful. And this is hard to recapitulate in Calgary, which is a relatively small university at the edge of the prairie. Coupled with this is traditionally the funding in Canada over the last 20 years since I started my career, unfortunately, has gone downhill. So you can see that little unhappy face that shows the proportion of R&D funding compared to our GDP. This is just a graph, but in person, this means that a PI has limited funds. Even the well-funded PIs have to be really judicious in how they spend their money. So travel awards like those provided by BINA and by other organizations are really critical for this kind of course in a geographically isolated part of the country. And through BINA, we had 1 or 2 students. We've been doing these courses since probably 2008 or so, maybe 1 or 2 people who were students from outside of Alberta, most of the instructors outside of Calgary, of course, but it was hard to draw those students in. And you can see with the BINA funding of the professional experience program was part of it, but part of it is word got around. That BINA brand and that people who, bioimaging scientists across Canada through Canada Bioimaging, we're a sister organization, and BINA together were able to promote this course and really draw a lot of interest, meaning that about half the students are from outside Calgary, which for us was a terrific balance. When it comes to education, I think it starts what Joel said, that education programs must be designed to be relevant and practical to the learner. It's great to give people lots of information, but if they can't act on an information as an outcome, well, I don't know that we're truly educating. And I found this Vision and Change, Vision and Cage, a call to action, really inspirational. So for those of you who are really involved in education, it's highly recommended reading. It's just a reminder to keep focused on the learner and to be focused on active and meaningful experiences for learners. Another useful framework we use when designing courses is this cognitive apprenticeship framework. It's that iceberg. We know more than we can say. Why do people come to courses? There are lots of protocols and YouTube videos out there. It's that one-on-one interaction where we make the implicit explicit. When we're at a microscope, Lucy, I remember Lucy was a new imaging scientist. Pina, how in the world do you find those tetrasomatic beats in 10 seconds when I've been spending an hour? She made me sit down and explain every little step. And that was a turning point for me. I realized how important it was to really explain what I take for granted. And I think when you start with this, when you start thinking about all the things that we think are natural as imaging scientists are not natural, it's something we take as given and as tacit, and we have to make it explicit to make a really powerful learning event. And most important is what I'm looking forward to this week too, is fostering those healthy connections and a healthy network. So the colleagues that we make here, the new and old, that our connections are strengthened and we have new connections. I'm really looking forward to seeing, I've already seen some 2D people turn into 3D image stacks. I'm really thrilled to be here and to interact with all of you. So when it came to design and workshop, where do you go? We connect with people, we say, look, are you interested? How can you help? We do the usual collaborating via Zoom, email, Google Documents. So the idea is to draw in all these brainstorming ideas and start winnowing and start building consensus. And you can see here that I think the instructors might have outnumbered the actual students. What was really wonderful about these group of instructors, we had a mix of faculty, students, graduate students actively engaged in work, postdocs, imaging scientists, people at all ages of their career. And it was a great equalizer. Everybody comes in together to teach. Didn't matter you're full professor and imaging scientist, you're here with a shared purpose. And every single one of these people listed gave so much of themselves, developing case studies based on their own research in the laboratories, preparing samples, working through troubleshooting all sorts of laboratories. It was just an incredible effort, and I thank them all. And James, I think you're the astronaut flying out into outer space. And when I talk about things being implicit, for all of us, imaging is a science. It's an experiment. It sounds obvious. Of course, it's an imaging experiment, but let me tell you, it's not obvious. I often, as an imaging scientist, go into a room and say, how many of you have run a mass spec? How many of you have run a mass spec? How many of you have looked through a microscope? And I would say this proportion is the same in a regular biology room. Well, there's not much to it. When I was hired in 2002, I had a leading faculty member saying, I don't know why they hired you. There's nothing to running a microscope. I don't understand this. And, I just kept on going. I knew there was something to it. I believed that there was something to it, which is this beautiful experiment. And this is where we start it and end with the course. It's about the experiment, not about the picture. Experiments, it's about your data and it's about your question. It's not about the pretty picture. It can be a little fun, but it's really about the science. And how we run the course too is the cognitive load is really high. If you're trying to learn super resolution in a week, you're not going to have a good time. You might pick up a little bit. So what we do is we scaffold the learning. We do a blended delivery model where about a month ahead of time, we release modules on different topics for a week. Self-directed, there's discussion boards, people talk and meet and talk to each other. In addition, we have a weekly live session where somebody might be running an activity or talking and communicating. But the idea isn't just the content, it's about this community building. So you can see lower here, this was at 8:40 on a Monday morning. We started at 8:30. Look at that energy level. I think this ice breaking, this community building is really key. It encourages learners. It makes you feel like you're supported. Science, so much of it is who's the smartest, who got the scholarship, who got the grant. And I'm not saying that to succeed, you don't need that, but sometimes it's nice to take a breather to say, okay, I'm here to learn, to make mistakes. I can be as dumb as I want, and it doesn't matter because we're all dumb together. We're all learning together. And I think it's really important to emphasize this. And in addition, when we designed the course, we had a keynote speaker, Sarah, who's a research associate in a lab running multiple point localization or single molecules stations, was able to come up and give an amazing talk, but also was dedicated on site helping people troubleshoot this type of experiment. And again, we had a lot of case study-based activities that were going on. So it wasn't just about taking images at a microscope. We had, how do you measure a cover slip? If you say it's a number 1.1 cover slip, it doesn't really mean it's truly the right size. This is how to do it cheaply with a caliper. If you're doing a super resolution, maybe you want to think about things like cover slip, things that maybe you can get away with in confocal become really important. So all these little tips and tricks that don't always make it into one protocol, we try to emphasize as well. The other thing we talked about, too, and Joel talked about, is these connections. We really try to encourage people, to give people a lot of unstructured time to have fun, to get to know each other, and hopefully to build lifelong collegial friendships that will last them as they embark in this really wonderful field. And also, for those of you who are interested in microscopy education, we'll be offering a course in Calgary. It's based on an evidence-based training workshop called the Instructional Skills Workshop. And we're really, it's usually run over 3 days, but we expanded 5 days to give a bit of breathing room. We know imaging scientists are already busy and typically overworked. So a little breathing room to talk, to deal with learning misconceptions. We talk about super resolution, but I still spend part of my day explaining that 100x objective is not necessarily going to give you more spatial resolution. So maybe tackling these commonalities and these common misconceptions as a community, this low level stuff is really important because it eats up a lot of my time. I'm sure of yours too. And the other thing too is that we're hoping that we could have at least 4 francophones who'd be interested, because our training team is a professional educational team. And we're hoping that half of it will be run in French, the small group sessions, and half the small group in English. So I encourage you to apply, and there'll also be travel awards available through BINA and hopefully through our own university. Last, I'd like to thank the Snyder Institute. The Snyder Institute has been supportive of core facilities, recognizing that it's more than just the equipment. It's about the people needed to extract the maximum value from this heavy investment infrastructure. In Canada, I shouldn't say it's easy, but it's easy to get millions from MinFlux system, 2 million. You can't get any, well, I can't get any money, it's shifting, but it's really hard to get money for people like me. So the idea here is that the Snyder Institute has made a difference in my life by making sure that I can do education and training as part of my work as well. And last, I talked about community, and thanks to BINA for funding my visit here. And I really look forward to meeting and hopefully meeting a lot of new people and getting ideas and being inspired and learning from all of you. Thank you.
Over here. And Joel, who Perfect.
Okay, you guys know the drill. Please raise your hand if you have a question, and please introduce yourself before you ask your question.
So I will kick things off here. So Nikki Bailey, I'm with Bioimaging North America. So Elida, you showed very nicely how, you transitioned from essentially not really having space of your own where you had to set things up in a conference room to a space where you could have stuff up dedicated all the time and have people come in. It's obviously had a massive impact. What would you say if somebody came to you and said this is something that they wanted to do? What cautionary notes would you have for them, and what encouraging notes would you have for them? And would one of those be join, first of all, Mexico Bioimaging and then possibly BINA to get with the community, so to speak?
To encourage them to come. We are still growing. It's not only, we are not the only place in Merida and Yucatan. There are other unities, there are other universities. We can work together. We actually work together. Thanks to the community, I've been in contact with them. We help each other. If I have some questions, I ask, well, in this case, CC or the other UNAM or the other university. So we work together. And after this long journey, complicated, but I'm happy with it. I learned a lot of things, and it's funny because some students come and ask me, and most of the time I don't know what to say. I don't know the answers, but the best thing I do is I don't know how to, but we're going to work. We're going to make it, and we start wondering. We start contacting people, and we get the job done. So I guess I'm not a microscopist. I wish I were, but I had the means, and in this community, it's the most important thing. Just go and ask and get the things. So if one day BINA wants to come, we could probably make something beautiful, even if it's we don't have the big space. We can have we can work with other groups. Yes. Yes.
Hi, I'm Jim Chambers from UMass Amherst. This question's for BINA. I really love the idea of this dripping out the content before the in-person or blended workshop. I was just wondering if you could talk a little more about that. Did you use any specific technology, or just to tell us a little more?
I think that this idea of the technology is a really important one. It starts with having a learning management system at your university that's workable. Not every learning management system is workable, but we have a desire to learn, or a D2L system, and we have a way to register external people onto the website, and also to keep it green. So it was really important to students. They were really worried that when they left the course that it would shut down. Actually, I noticed it's still going. So I was going to send an email to everybody asking how things were going and whether they were going to join some of the BINA working groups. So I would say that's number one. The second thing is in the instructional design, the balance between information and learning is a difficult one, right? When I first started teaching, I wanted to include everything but the kitchen sink in there. I felt like I was doing the students a disservice. And I find when you design these, the leaner, the better. It's more about the mindset, making them approach it as an experiment. That's more important than anything than the actual content, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's answering your question.
Hi, my name's Genevieve. I'm from McGill University. This question is more for Pina, but I know that Joel and Elena can also answer it. Pina, you mentioned Calgary being very geographically isolated. What can scientists do just in their day-to-day to help take down some of these barriers with being geographically isolated?
This is a really important point. How do we tackle this? I mean, we're a really privileged, developed country. You can fly to Calgary. You know, I invite the community, somebody help me out here. I would say, you know, it's interesting because I asked the PIs who have CIHR funding, do you get extra money to fly out to Montreal? Like my husband's out in Montreal for 3 days, but then he noticed that the 4 women on the committee couldn't be there. Well, guess what? They're the primary caregivers at home and can't go in there. So it's not more, it's more like asking the questions and making sure that, I don't know, I don't have an answer. We're a thin strip across the country. So I would say more funding, more interaction, maybe when you see something in Calgary, just recommending us. And it's not only, imagine Calgary, we have a major airport. Flavie, one of our instructors, has just installed a microscope, I think there's a microscope on a boat to the Arctic. Imagine us, like Calgary, I have everything. I have, you know, I don't have a Target, but you know what I mean? We have access to everything, but imagine you start going further north. So I think your idea of the geographic isolation is deeper than Calgary. It's like we take it for granted, oh, that everybody has a STED system. Well, you know, there's some places that didn't have a STED system until recently. So when reviewers come back and ask this, it's almost an equity question because not every university is resourced this way. And then the further north you go up, yeah, I guess I don't have an answer for you, but I would love to work on an answer with the community.
Hi.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
did you have another answer?
No, I have a question here. You know. Joel, do you want to respond to that as well?
I mean, I was just gonna say, like, the way I'm presenting now, you know, having that virtual option, and also for the workshop that I went to, like having that hub online, being able to access the resources even after, because when I speak about, for example, the connections that I made, you know, some of them were in Montreal. I would tell them, "Oh, come visit me in Victoria," but they're like, "Oh, well, it's easier for us to fly to Europe than to Victoria, so it'll be difficult." But you know, having the contact and the online kind of being able to access everyone and being able to facilitate those connections even beforehand, you know, I remember there were some icebreakers on the online components. So you're starting those connections even before you're even in person. So, I mean, the easiest answer to the isolation is the online. But of course, there's all kinds of other barriers you need to overcome.
I am James Junkman from Toronto. So, I mean, BINA is obviously doing fantastic work, funding these exchange of experiences and funding people to go to workshops. So that's obvious by your presentations, what an impact it's having. But it struck me that, Alita, when you're presenting about your home institution, it struck me that you don't have very many microscopes, and I'm embarrassed to say that in my facility I have a graveyard of old microscopes. I jokingly call my graveyard that I don't know what to do with. I can't stand to throw them out.
I can go to
But you know, and I wonder if we could have another EOE, an exchange of equipment initiative through BINA. Maybe we should give it a different acronym to avoid confusion. But there are challenges with this because a lot of them have motorized components that are old. Like part of the reason I decommission them is they don't, you know, they work under Windows XP or something like this. They would need new components and refreshing, and you need money, you need space. I don't know if you can maybe comment on, would it be helpful to have an exchange of equipment or a donation of equipment? Would you find space for it? It would have to be carefully curated so that you don't get junk that you can't use, right? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you. Yes, it would be very, very helpful. The pictures I put, it's the recent area we had. We have more space, but we are growing slowly. because, well, this specifically this year, it was complicated in terms of use of money because Mexico is changing the government. And in terms of space, we have space. It was complicated for that. But yes, it would be great for us if you had something we can exchange or something you don't now use it. Because it will give me the opportunity to to push or to press the other areas, so we can have a bigger space, to have more money, to have you know, this the space or the place more adequate. So yes, if there's any somehow we can talk or we can start doing this, it would be great. Because we have a lot of students, we have a lot of researchers that are working, and at the time, well, now we have probably 15 students, and they have different projects. And well, at the eventually, we're going to have to make a schedule. Who's going to use them? What people are going to do, and everything. So yes, now we have the opportunity, because I started this area. We didn't have it, and now we are growing. So it's a great opportunity. If we can chat later. Thank you.
I think Nikki wanted to say.
So I did just quickly want to say, sort of watch this space. So BINA's involved with this effort called Microscopy DB, and that is an effort to try and centralize microscopy resources in general. And at last steering committee, we decided we would pilot a base for collecting equipment that people have that they want to try and find homes for. And that exchange of experience program could also be used if you wanted to fly to where a piece of equipment was, see it get dismantled and fly it back and get it installed. So, you know, use some of the programs creatively that we have in order to try and help with things like that. But that is coming down the pipe.
I just wanted to add to that as well. From the corporate partners group's perspective, as Nikki knows, we've discussed this a lot. And the main problem is we would all love to give old equipment to labs abroad, but the problem is support. If the equipment breaks down, particularly if it's old equipment and therefore it's no longer supported, the last thing anyone wants is to like deliver a non-functional piece of equipment to a poor lab somewhere in a different country, and then there's no one to fix it. So this is something that we're talking about. I'm really glad that's happening now, Nikki, but yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah, a couple of quick comments. I mean, it's definitely true. It'd be great to do it, but two issues. One is the electronics, and the software is a huge issue. And that's something they're also dealing with the Africa initiative, when they're donating equipment from companies. But the other big problem that I've had is I've donated a lot of equipment to small schools, but it's really hard to get the administration at universities to give you permission to donate outside the country. We've had a hard time even sending it to private schools. If it's a state school, it's no problem in the state. But at most universities, they have a pretty strict rule about tracking equipment, and it's a bigger deal than I thought. And so it'd be very hard to get permission for me to send microscopes to another country, much less a private school in Wisconsin. Right?
So if I could add one more comment. Hi, Jessica Back, Wayne State University in Detroit. So I am more of a cytometrist by training, and I'm part of the executive committee for the International Society for Advancement of Cytometry, and we have a program where we donate cytometry instruments. And I will say all of the things you're mentioning are all the things we're dealing with, and we've been doing this for many years. We are now starting to work with a nonprofit, and I can look up the name of the company, that actually helps with the process of taking applications and helping to deliver instruments. But what we have had to do is we've had to kind of provide our own retired engineers who donate their time to collect the instruments and getting them functional and getting them working and getting them in a way that we can send them. And then we tend to send a trainer with the instrument to train the recipient labs. And we're working on trying to get donations of equipment or consumables to help with that. But yeah, the issue of The maintenance is a big part of it. And so part of the training we do is kind of walking through all of that as well. And I will say we are now finally at the point where we're getting companies who want to donate new instruments to the program. And we have way more people who want an instrument than we have, obviously. But it's definitely been a process to get to this point. And yeah, it's not an easy answer because of the equipment and the software and all of those things that go with it. But also what we've run into, and something that I think BINA needs to consider as well, is that we get a lot of applications where people say, we really need an instrument. And now we're trying to make it so that, okay, cool, we want to help you, we want to make it better for you, but we now also want you to contribute and be involved in the community as well. And so if ISAC is going to give you an instrument, what are you going to give back to ISAC? Is that going to be to help educate people in your area and use your instrument as like that test subject so that we're doing more outreach too in the process? So yeah, I think BINA definitely needs to take this on.
Hi, I'm Judith from Montreal, Canada. Look, on that topic, I run an independent business and I've been being donated a lot of unused equipment. The other value of that sometimes is that you can use those unused equipment to tear them apart and learn what's inside. And then you're not afraid of, you can use them as guinea pig to figure out if you can do or not do something. So that broken and not functioning equipment also has value if you want to learn stuff.
Does anyone have any more additions to the equipment discussion before we move on?
Hi, my name is Quinn Lee from the University of Illinois, Chicago. First off, I wanted to thank the speakers for their wonderful presentations, as well as Mariana for sharing the great work with the DEI working group. Touching to a point that Alita made about people or scientists who do a lot of microscopy, but may not self-identify as microscopists versus people who do. How would you guys suggest we can bridge that gap to help people bring into the fold of being microscopists? Because I feel like that can sometimes be a barrier with how we identify. Yeah, it's a big question, but if you guys could share your thoughts.
Thank you. Well, I don't consider myself microscopist because I don't have the time to be there, to be in the microscope as much as I want. And that's why I don't have a lot of expertise, but I help the people to do the job. And what I also do, and I love this part, it's to go to the schools. It's part of the different communities I am. I go to secondary schools or even university. I try to be involved in this part of STEM projects in Yucatan, just to make people to let them know that this area it's open for everybody. It's growing. We need, well, I say we need, because I hear the people. I hear you all when you start talking about your projects, and sometimes you don't have enough people or students to work with you, or the experience. So this is what I try to transmit to these students or to these people, so they can come to this area, to this community, to start to practice, to have the opportunities you're offering. And the bridge, it's just trying, just talking, just making it loud. Go to the places, go to the students, go to talks, go to everywhere, and start saying, hey, we are here, please come. It's beautiful, it's rewarding. I don't know, it's just, something I do, and I think it's happening. In my experience, we are having more students now that wants to do something, I don't know, in microscopy for their jobs, for their thesis. So probably it's working. If you want to add something.
Yeah, thanks, Quinn. So part of that, Global Bioimaging has a career development working group, which is precisely working on defining a glossary of what, how to define the career. And that's for all sorts of reasons, including career development, what you have access to, promotions, this sort of thing. And of course, identification with the group, right? Belonging. So that's a great point.
I could add something. It's really tough as in an imaging science field, like, as you know, it's only recently that we have a name, bioimaging scientists. So this idea of identity is really important. In 2002, I didn't have an identity. I was alone in Calgary, and I would say that transformation to realizing that there was a name for what I did was really powerful for me. And the idea of it being interdisciplinary, we have, I come from chemical physics, we have space scientists, we have computer scientists. I think just making that really clear up front, it's an interdisciplinary science. Without cell biologists, we'll be dust. Without in vivo people doing interval, we're dust. It's an integrative science. And I think just really being inclusive, encouraging people, and the fact that it's not just platform people here. It's really important that platform people, but platform people need the people who have these really fascinating programs to support. So this idea of being interdisciplinary, being really inclusive and really getting out there, maybe having more presence. I noticed that cell biology last year, BINA was there. I think that's really important as well. So the idea of not just being a little echo chamber for ourselves, but really bridging and bringing people in from all over.
Hi, Chris Wood from Mexico, National Laboratory for Microscopy. So anyone, I think I have a warning, really. I mean, anyone that's thinking of dabbling in microscopy, it's highly addictive. So be very careful. I speak as a recovering microscopist myself. I don't get nearly as much time on the scopes as I would like. So it's a bit of a sad situation. But that kind of segues into the point for Joel. I mean, Joel, you mentioned that you have a STED microscope and that the maintenance is an issue. So you're now getting outside groups come in to use the microscope. I mean, do you know how many core facilities start that way? I mean, you're on the slippery slope now. Are you prepared? Are you now prepared to take that, step into the light, join the light side? Is this now part of your plans? Are you contemplating it?
It's funny you say that because I remember when I had a meeting with Pina earlier, she was like, "It sounds like you're the core facility, Joel, from where you are." I was like, "Oh, well, I hadn't thought of that." But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about that, but also, I mean, yeah, there's challenges, especially because our lab does a lot of things. Like not everyone is doing imaging, so there's periods where it's like even before we even started, I think we only had like one group or something that would come in. We didn't even really have a calendar to book the microscope, but there's all these things that have been developing when we have more labs coming in. So if it's a plan, I don't know, but there's definitely more things that are turning to make it look that way. Are we prepared? I don't know if you can be prepared.
Hello, my name is Xiu Juan. I work in the UW College of Engineering Corporate Relations. One of my responsibilities is to promote the industry use of our shared facilities. So I can imagine in your shared facility and in your experiential learning, do you engage with companies and entrepreneurs into your project and into your shared facility? And then how do you leverage BINA to expand your industry use? Your strategies, your measurement matrix, things like that.
I didn't emphasize enough without our industrial partners, this would not be possible. We don't have the critical mass of equipment, of super resolution equipment to offer a course. So without their incredible support, we would have been able to have that course, number one. Again, it's not about the microscopes, right? It's about the people. So really that the companies invest in allowing the time precious time of the company people to be involved was really important. So we had one thing that was really important, we had on-site equipment, but we also had off-site remote sessions that were done live at some of the company's headquarters. I'm not naming particular companies on purpose, by the way, not because I'm not grateful. It's on our QSW site too. It's just, I want to be sure I don't forget anybody. And the second thing, in terms of industrial partnerships, the industrial partnerships and research contracts are integral to the LCI. We're a self-funded laboratory. So we do take research contracts, prototyping contracts to keep us going. And as we work with people here too, some of this money, of course, is allocated to our education and training. So I would say we do have active relationships in our educational program, but also active relationships that actually fund our imaging center.
So I have a, oh, are you going to add? Go ahead. Okay. I have a question for Pina. So you talk about, training the trainers. What is the biggest piece of information or conception that has to be unlearned by a microscopy educator in order to effectively engage with your students?
People are going to throw eggs. Anybody have an egg here at the beginning? Point spread functions. You have to start with a point spread function. You should be starting with the problem. And then the point spread function is absolutely essential. But the idea of it being not linear, I've had these wonderful discussions because this is cultural too. I'm talking more about the Canadian educational system. I know that there's some colleagues in the room that it's a bit more linear and built up this way. Ours is more of a cycle. Go in, what do you need to do to know, how to competently carry out an immunofluorescence experiment? What you need to do for that, if you're looking at cells versus looking at the localization of proteins, is very different. So the lens you want is what competencies are needed for the person to have rigorous data. That's where it has to start, rather than just being an information dump. And then you scaffold. And if you're at all interested, I've been working with colleagues in the room on a competency framework for optical microscopy, much as it exists for medicine, radiology, physiotherapy, airplane pilots. I think we also need one in optical imaging. So that way we can codify what you need to know and what you need to do different types of experiments. And this goes a long way from imaging being more than just snapping a picture to actually designing and executing and analyzing and acting on that experiment.
Thank you. That sounds excellent.
Have time for maybe a question, more, 2 questions maybe.
So I understand that you're very appreciative of the industry's donation of the equipment. My previous question is more focusing on how do you attract industry users to your shared facility and make your facility, I guess, more sustainable financially, or your shared facility is economical to operate? Because my problem here is we have expensive equipment and it's very expensive to use it only for teaching. So that's my.
It's not about the microscope, it's the people. When we tried to have, we come up with contracts where people use the microscope. In the end, the companies come to us because we help them, their guides, and we're transparent every step. For example, we just finished, I can't say with whom, but we finished a big contract where they said, we want to test this. I can say that we want to test this drug. What options do you have? And so we sit down and we advise and consult. And then in the end, we scope out the project and we have a contract. And of course, it has 40%. In Canada, we used to have 25% in our university. Now it's 40% overhead. So we have an overhead. It's all done through the university. And this can take a couple of months, sometimes as long as 6 months to get hammered out. But in the end, if you make it about the microscope, you're not going to have a good time. We tried that. I'd say it's more about these contracts and the solving the problem. We've had, we also have prototyping. So we've made prototype medical devices for some startups. And the other trick is cost. The cost, I had a company in Montreal call me expecting me to build a really complex microscope and do all these tests for $100 because some core facility said they could do for $100, and you've scoped out a $60,000 project. See you later. So being a bit more not wanting to give all the time, but really having a sense of what it costs. It's not just equipment, it's the people, it's the reagents, and then also building in, it's just like a renovation cost contingency. And if you're interested, I'd be happy to talk to you this. We learned by making a lot of mistakes, but I feel like we have a good, fair systems now.
Great. If there are no more questions, are there more questions? Yeah, great. Okay, this is our last.
It's actually just a follow-up point there. So sometimes microscopy services are not too high on the shopping list of companies, but there may well be other core facilities in the university that are more used to dealing with commercial services. So it may be an idea to speak to other core facilities, sequencing, for example, metagenomics. They tend to do more work with them. Also, one of the and what we found when we spoke to some of the other services, the certifications can be important. So ISOs, these sort of things can make things much easier for companies to interact with universities. But there's a lot of experience here. I don't know where Phil is. Does Phil come to this session? No. So Phil Hochberger's he's around in the meeting somewhere, so he'll certainly be able to give you lots of advice there. I certainly recommend speaking to him about these sorts of things as well.
Thank you so much, everyone, to our speakers, first of all, and to everyone for engaging in discussions. One last thing before we move on. I wanted to invite anyone, so I forgot to say that in my presentation, to invite anyone who would like to become a representative of any community and wants to join the DI group, please do so. Approach me during all this meeting and we'll be happy to welcome you.
Yes, and anyone online interested in, oh yes, let's do a round of applause in the room. And anyone in the virtual audience, you too are welcome to join any of the working groups. You can reach out to us via the email and we'll connect you with the chairs of any of the groups. With that, in-person folks, we're going to go do a photo. I think it seems like it was nice outside last time I saw the sun. So hopefully you guys can make your way out onto the patio outside. Should be go towards where the varsity hall is, but make a left. There's a door leading to some stairs. Let's get a nice photo up there. If you guys can get set up there, I'm going to take a moment and get a photo with our virtual audience before we break for lunch. Thank you all so much for joining this session, and we'll see you at lunch.